Okay, so these questions where we have to choose whether to use Z or T, when it boils down to what you need to know for the final exam and what you're going to use in your career fields, it tends to be a lot simpler than this specific type of question. But I want to go through a flow chart for how you would decide whether to use the Z, which we can think of as plan A, or the T, which is plan B, or maybe we don't really have clarity on which to use. And I made this chart, which I think can be helpful. It's essentially asking yourself three questions. So you start by, if you know that the population is normal or about normal, and you say yes to that question, you're going to move to the left side. If you would say no, or if you just don't have information, if it doesn't even tell you if it's normal or approximately normal, if you just don't know that information, then you're going to move to the right side of this flow chart here. Uh, if you move to the left, so if you do know that the population is normal or about normal, you're going to ask, do you know the population standard deviation? So if they give you, in the problem, if a standard deviation is given, check and see if that's coming from the sample, which is not sigma, that's just the letter S, or if it's saying that this is the known standard deviation for the population, or we assume this is the known population. In that case, you're going to answer that yes, you use a Z, you go with plan A. If the population is normal, but you don't know sigma, well, you're going to flow down here to the right and see how big the sample is. If it's bigger than 30, then really you could use either one, a T or a Z. If it's not bigger than 30, so it is about normal, but you don't know sigma, it's a small sample, then you use the T. You shouldn't use the Z. On the other hand, if we don't have information about the population distribution, or if we know that it's not normal, then we're going to see how big it is. If it is big, if it's bigger than 30, and again, this is somewhat arbitrary, but this is what we're using in this course. If it's bigger than 30, we're going to ask if sigma is known. If it is, we'll use Z. If it's not, we'll typically use T, but it would be okay to use Z also. Now, in this case, if you don't know sigma, you're going to have to use an S in the formula. So the formulas, these are the formulas for Z and T typically. In those cases where it says T and in parentheses or Z, where you could use either one, then you would just replace this sigma with an S. So you'd really use the formula for T. Essentially, you're using the T formula. Notice, by the way, when it says T or Z, that's different than unclear. So if you say it's not normal and it's a small sample, it's unclear without more information about the distribution. This is different than T or Z. T or Z means you can use both. It's your choice. You can use whichever one you want. This over here is the least desirable situation. We probably shouldn't move forward because we don't really know what to do in this situation. Now, in reality, most people are just going to use the T anyway. But for the purposes of these Alex questions, if we don't have that information or it's not normal, and if it's a small sample, there's going to be an option here that says it's unclear which to use. That's what that's describing here. That's the scenario with a small sample that's not from a known normal distribution. So following this chart, and put this chart in your notes, that'll just answer the questions in that order, and that'll get you to the thing. And then for this type of thing where you do have to calculate a number, remember that the formula itself is essentially the same, whether you do a T or a Z. The only difference is coming in what the standard deviation. So a Z is going to have the sigma, and a T is going to have the sample standard deviation.